The Quran and the Injil both say that Jesus is the gospel or good news. And Christians, to me, when they view Islam, too many are looking at bad news. They're trying to focus on things that they perceive as negative, things that we disagree with. And frankly, any politician knows you can't get a vote by telling people, a potential voter, what you don't like about them. You try to find common ground. And once you've found common ground with someone that's probably unlike you or different from you, and you begin to eat and break bread together, and you even push that idea out further by praying together, all of a sudden you become friends, and we become friends, you build bridges of trust, and then once there's trust built, then you can start talking about issues that you think you disagree with. And as I've discovered through the research of the Quran and the Bible, even these critical issues that we thought over history, we fought and killed each other at times over, at least now have a distaste for each other and call each other heretical or apostate. Frankly, those issues are misinterpretations from either the Arabic to the English of the Quran, or the Aramaic of the language of Jesus and the Bible to English or to Arabic or other language, and we begin comparing the Bible and the Quran in a translated language, we find that they conflict. But when one compares the Bible and the Quran in the original languages, the Arabic and Aramaic, I find that they actually do not conflict anywhere near as much as we thought they did. Not like you've read a memo, a private memo I'm finishing up in the next 48 hours. I hope to send to 25,000 U.S. Christian pastors about the good news toward Islam, and urging Christian pastors to rethink their strategy and their thinking about Islam. And much in it, I referred to Christians back and said, remember, we had our dark ages of crusades, inquisitions, pogroms against Jews in Europe. We were in colonization and even slavery, which is one thing I'm not sure you mentioned or not. So I'll go even further. So there are things in the past that we need to repent for. We need to ask forgiveness for. And I think in the process, you said, where do we begin? It begins with you and I together. It begins with this television show. It begins reaching out a hand to the first Muslim or Christian that we meet, and asking each other to sit down to talk together. And if we can reach a point of breaking bread and even praying together, I have seen even with leaders of Muslim countries who our government feels are despots. I've taken the sometimes controversial, provocative steps of traveling to these countries, meeting with these leaders, finding common ground through the Bible and the Quran, through the prophets, eating together, praying together, and through that process, political things begin altering and changing. And if you're, in conclusion of the thought, if you read the book, The Deadly Misunderstanding, it has many stories that were this strategy of building bridges and being positive and having a good news approach rather than a bad news negative approach, you can attract much more positive attention and tremendous substantive results as a consequence. We have, like in the Palestinian-Israeli issue that you alluded to earlier, it's always based on politics. Whether the two sides meet together or are forced to meet together, there are always political preconditions. Whether it's a discussion about Darfur in the Sudan, or it's a peace or rapprochement with Gaddafi, it always has been, let's engage in a political process. Well, I just don't believe, if one begins with the political process, that any tangible solution will ever come about. So what is the alternative? The alternative, and what you alluded to earlier, is building a bridge. And how's that done? A spiritual bridge. I know this sounds preposterous to some, but I have seen it work. If you read the book, you'll see this coincidence happens repeatedly, where you bring in leaders together, not talk politics initially. You get to politics. We'll get to a resolution. We'll get to Jerusalem. We'll get to the West Bank. We'll get to the settlements. But first we need to get to a spiritual camaraderie, a spiritual connect that heretofore has been impossible because we look at each other so heretically in so many key issues of our faith that we thought we could never find spiritual common ground. And what I'm arguing, my friend, is that we have found spiritual common ground. Not only a little bit, but profoundly so. Enough that we can begin friendship even with our worst enemies or worst competitors, and from that relational spiritual bonding then can build up a political resolution to, I believe, most any crisis. Yeah, I just want to clarify one little comment that I heard in the translation. I did not apologize or speak at all about the Lockerbie issue. What I apologized to Gaddafi through his foreign minister was for the killing in 1984 of Gaddafi's daughter. There was a U.S. missile sent to one of his homes, his residences, and killed his daughter. And I think America is more noble to run around sending bombs and killing leaders' children. It was meant for him, of course, but since it did kill his daughter, as a matter of fact, I asked for forgiveness and apologized. And that's when the atmosphere began changing. And we began talking about the similarities, and I was just in the beginning of the research at that time of the Quran and the Bible, and a very, as you point out, a very negative, hostile feeling, at least a hostile environment change, of very friendly. In fact, we even prayed together at the very end of the meeting. And subsequently, and to give you a little insight to your question, subsequently we decided not to continue our travels to Tripoli. As you know, that was very difficult because we had to leave without a passport. We couldn't secure a visa, couldn't buy a ticket to, from, or through Libya, so it was extraordinarily difficult to get in and out and do it in a legal fashion, which we did, by the way. So we decided to be more prudent to meet with one of Gaddafi's people through the United Nations. So we met with one of his trusted advisors on a repeated basis in New York. Eventually got this gentleman a visa to come to Washington. You know, at that time they couldn't leave New York City because of the sanctions against Libya. And we believe that the praying together, the studying of the holy books together, and people say that's preposterous. What would that have to do with anything? Most Americans say it's because we invaded Iraq and scared Gaddafi. I said, if a missile in your own home killing your own child doesn't scare you, a war in another country is not going to scare you. So I believe that there are spiritual components. As a spiritual person, there are spiritual components, and there are things that are unseen. The Quran and the Bible talk about the unseen, and this is part of what I believe, frankly, is the unseen. When you pray and learn to like each other and respect each other and tolerate each other, even though we're your political enemies, but we can be friends in the spirit, anything is possible. And I've seen it in this case. And people say it's a coincidence. I say, great, read on another case. And they'll say that's a coincidence. So I said, well, this is wonderful. We can live one coincidence after another. This is why, of course, my objectors often will say, well, this is just coincidental. There are so many other factors. There are always other factors. But why is it there's stalemates? For example, there was never a result in the Sudan UN peacekeeping force. There was a stalemate there, and I believe that through prayer and through building friendships, that there could be a political combination sufficient enough made to everyone was happy, and now there are peacekeeping troops in Darfur. And I'm not saying it was just a supernatural event. I'm saying it's a combination of events where you insert along the side what I call the fifth track. Diplomacy, politics, economics, and military, the first four, and the spiritual track helps sort of bring the rest of them together, and I believe is the missing ingredient in diplomacy.